It's my great pleasure to introduce the keynote, or not the keynote speaker, the distinguished speaker of this afternoon, Ed Coyle. Ed Coyle is also a distinguished professor at Georgia Tech. Most of you probably have read the bio. I'm going off script here. I'm not going to read the bio. I'm going to add a little personal note. I met Ed 24 years ago when I joined Purdue University in 1995. Ed was there, one of my favorite colleagues. I never told Ed, so Ed, now you know. Ed then left us about 10 years later, so that's why I never got to tell him. He went to Georgia Tech. I wised up a little later. I left Purdue 1.5 years ago and came to UD. At Purdue, I was in the computer area. Ed was in signal processing. He made very important contributions to signal processing, among others, for nonlinear theory of signal processing. Another thing he started at Purdue that I was also had the pleasure of being involved in is something that you know here. It's the VIP program, the vertically integrated projects involving students, undergrad and grad, in research. I was very pleasantly surprised to see that program here at UD when I joined here. So that was fantastic. And now it gets even better. We hear from the creator of the VIP program. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Ed Coyle.
Try to know who's in the audience. And so I'm curious, how many of you are undergraduates? Ah, great. Okay, how many of you are graduate students? That's good. How about faculty? Administrators? A few, that's good. How many of you are not in engineering? Is that one in the back? Okay, what are you in? Physics. Perfect. So this is designed to be a talk for everybody. Even if you're not an engineer, this is supposed to work for you. So, but it works for undergraduates, graduate students, and for faculty. And what I'm going to be talking about, oops, let me bring up the presentation here. It has a rather long title because it's hard to separate what I do in education from what I do in research. And while the research topic is theory, design, and large-scale wireless networks, the way we actually do the research in that area is through 2 VIP teams. I'm the lead advisor on one and the co-advisor of another one. And those are the Stadium, Internet of People and Things team, and the Intelligent Digital Communications VIP team. And these are the people that are part of these teams. So the 2 of us that advise them, Randy Abler, another faculty member, and I. He would be classified as a Unix guru, for example. So he's a great systems person, great implementation person. PhD students whose work I'll be talking about in this talk are these 4 here, Deepa, Paul, Sexen, and Gaith. And then the undergraduates who are part of these VIP teams. And literally over the years, there have been hundreds of these students, because the average size for my teams is about 20 students per semester. And they come from electrical and computer engineering, computer science, industrial engineering, civil engineering, and business. And I'll explain exactly what they're all doing as part of the team. Okay, so VIP, that's our logo up there, and the ladder associated for the V means there are students from 2nd, 3rd till final year, master's students, PhD students, and faculty on every single team. And VIP stands for Vertically Integrated Projects, and that's the vertical part. And the purpose of it is to unite what we now call, instead of research and education, scholarship and exploration. And scholarship is the development of deep knowledge and expertise in one or more fields, and exploration, it depends on what field you are. It could be discovery in science, design and engineering and architecture, creativity in the arts, innovation if you're an entrepreneur. And I prefer these terms to research and education because they work in every single field. And we actually have VIP teams now in every single discipline. Okay, and the course that supports it, we have our own subject code, VIP. So as a sophomore, you can participate for 1 credit per semester. Junior, 1, 2, or 3, depending on your department. Senior, 1, 2, or 3, it counts as senior design. And then there are now graduate courses approved that count towards master's degrees at 1, 2, or 3 credits. You can also be paid, that's a 0 credit option. Okay, so this is how we organize the team. The undergraduates and some of the graduate students are all earning academic credit. And what they do is they work with me and Randy and my PhD students on our research. So this is a photo of the team from about 5 years ago, and this actually wasn't even everybody there that particular day. There were 4 other students who couldn't make the photo, including the 2 other women on the team. So this team actually does better than most ECE, CS heavy teams in terms of participation by women and by underrepresented minorities. And then these are 2 of the grad students, Sexton and Gaith. Okay, well, what do we do? This is a photo of the Stadium Internet of People and Things team. And along with the Intelligent Digital Communications team, we use this as our test bed. So this is Bobby Dodd Football Stadium at Georgia Tech. And if you're looking for an example of what the future is going to look like in wireless communications and sensing and a lot of other fields, you can find it in a football stadium on game day. So this is the stadium's full there. You can see the giant jumbotron at the end, the team's on the field. You know, there's bands, and media people, medical emergency people there. It's a really cool environment. And so there are 55,000 fans, 2 football teams, lots of people who are there for various services. There are also thousands of people watching the game at home. And then the things that are in the stadium are also of interest to us. So there are video clips that we can get of plays because there are video cameras all around the stadium, stats, history of Georgia Tech, history of the opponent, the devices, people's phones, which are full of sensors nowadays. The video cameras, RF and vibration sensors that we build and deploy in the stadium, network, cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee that we actually put in there ourselves. So it's a very rich environment. In fact, there are so many RF interfaces, we call it an extreme emitter density environment. And so in terms of the future of wireless, this is a great thing to take a look at. Okay, so that's the background, that's what's in the stadium. Now, what do we do with it? So what we want to do is create, normally you've heard, how many of you have heard the term Internet of Things? Yeah, well that's fine, and they keep talking about the Internet of Things as your refrigerator will talk to your toaster and we'll do other things around the house. And I've never actually been interested in that. And I think what's more likely to happen is some other manufacturer's toaster in the condo above mine is going to try to hack my toaster and keep it from working right. I'm really interested in having people in the middle because they're should be the ultimate consumers of the services. So we stick a P in there for the Internet of People and Things. And what we want to do is gather information from all sorts of different sources. Some that are already in the stadium, some things that we build and put out there that I'll talk about, and combine them all in one spot, mix them up, produce neat things for fans and stadium personnel to have access to on game day. So some of the things, we have video clips. You can access any play that's happened in the game so far. That's what we did back in 2001, 2002, which was very early for that. Now we have plays ranked by fan reaction, according to how they make the stadium shake. There are social networks for the fans, which works really well at a college level because their alumni come back and want to sort of find each other. So social networks in the stadium, improved stadium services, pre-game, post-game games for people to play while they're in the stadium and so forth. And so the challenge is how do you gather and share all this information, sometimes in real time, and sometimes it has a lot of complexity associated with it. Okay, so I'm going to give 2 examples out of all the different things these 2 teams have done, just to keep things a little bit simple. So example 1 is how we gather vibration data, which is how we rank fan reaction to different plays. So if there's a touchdown, people usually jump up and they're clapping or doing something, and so that actually makes the stadium shake, and we can sense that. So what we've done, and this is where the undergraduates come in on my work, My PhD students are doing all the theory, they produce algorithms, and the undergraduates are the ones that actually design the systems and deploy them and operate them in the stadium on game day. And the athletics folks are great collaborators in this. We actually have 3 systems that are deployed in the stadium that they help us do that. So this has a very sensitive accelerometer that's held onto the steel girder with a magnet, and this is just a wireless sensing node. So it takes the analog data from here, digitizes it, and transmits it back to a cluster head. That's just a glimpse of what's inside the box. With this, we can measure the vibration of the stands. But because they're up in remote parts of the stands, they're wireless and for communications, and then they're battery or solar powered. Okay, so that's a photo a little further back so you can actually see it in Parden Stadium. And last year we had 4 of them out there. And the reason for 4 of them is we were also trying to figure out how the stadium flexed while the fans were jumping up and down, because that's a maintenance issue for the concrete deck. That's actually where the civil engineers come in on the team. And so these are 4 sensors deployed there. They all had to be highly synchronized. And so all the sensor nodes transmit to a cluster head that has a network connection that goes back to our building and back to one of our servers, the SensorNet server. One of the other things we have in there is an RF sensor network. This is one of the nodes for that. And so we're actively monitoring the RF spectrum usage in the stadium throughout the game. And this one's actually liquid cooled, and we generate about anywhere from 4 to 10 terabytes of data, of RF data during the game. So this is the actual SensorNet that was out there. So we had the 4 nodes. There was a version of Zigbee that was used to communicate wirelessly with the cluster head, and then basically the pathway back to our SensorNet server. And what's really cool, and it took one of my graduate students to do this, is without GPS we can synchronize the data collection across the nodes to within 100, and actually it's less than that, it's about 100 microseconds. And that's good enough for us to tell if the stadium is flexing like this or bouncing like that. So here's some real data. We were surprised when we first saw this, because we didn't expect to be able to tell what was happening in the game when we first collected the data. So on the left-hand side here, this is the acceleration in G's that's sensed by the sensor. And then this is the time in the game from the beginning of the game till somewhere in the 3rd quarter where we stopped recording. And one of the things we noticed is that, whoa, after a touchdown, we actually see the spike because people are jumping around. There was a Budweiser advertisement that actually gets people bouncing in the stands. So we can see when they're playing that. This is the start of halftime, where lots of people get up and start walking around. They make the stadium shake. So this gave us an idea, which was to look into the rest of the data and look at these other spikes here. And it turns out each one of them is associated with a play in the game. It might not have been a scoring play, but it was a play that fans reacted to in a strong way. So now what we do is when we collect a video clip of a play, we timestamp that when we save it, and then we look in the SensorNet data at an interval before and after that and compute the students call it hypeness, a hypeness measure. It's basically an energy measure of how much energy the crowd put into the stadium as a result of that play. And so we now use their reaction to rank plays in the game. And assuming all things work out here. So this is what you see. Oops. So this is what you would see on your phone. And you'll notice that this was the end of the game. So this was the Duke Georgia Tech game. But this is the first game where we actually had the plays ranked by fan reaction. So on the main page, you can see the scores for the quarter. You have all the scoring plays and a video associated with each one of them. If you go up here, you can see all the other things we have, the team statistics, play-by-play. That's every play in the game we have a video clip of. This is what's new, the popular play. So for the 4th quarter, these are all the plays ranked in descending order of fan reaction. So this was the most popular play that particular quarter. And here's another one, rush for 50 yards. We can take a look at that one. And that is a pretty good play. And so what we eventually want to have is sensors in different parts of the stadium so we can look at different fan reactions too. But anyway, that's what's available to you on your phone as a fan inside the stands. And so if you want to go back and look at a cool play, it's very easy for you to find it. So the key is, before I had my VIP team, I could do lots of papers, publish and go present at conferences, but I never had a chance to build cool stuff like this. And it's just a lot of fun. And also the students love it because we all get into the game for free. We are working in there, but we all get into every single football game for free. Second example. And this is where I'll lead into some of the deeper theory behind all this. Gathering data from fans, and in particular, their phones or other devices. They have smart watches now, smartphones, and they've got all sorts of sensors. If you just look at some of the latest iPhones, you have an accelerometer, you've got GPS, you have still and video cameras, microphones, touchscreen, compass. There's even a barometer now. So you could actually do crowdsourcing of barometric information for weather prediction. Future sensors, maybe chem biosensors, some more biometric things for diagnosing health. If you're having an emergency while in the stadium, have a heart attack or something. Augmented reality, energy scavenging. There are all sorts of things that might appear in future phones. So these are a rich source of information. The key is how to gather it in something like a stadium where you have 55,000 people, because that's a lot of data. And so challenges are 55,000 fans. They always overload the cellular and Wi-Fi networks that are in the stadium, and they have limited battery life. And so how to collect information from them. And what we decided to look at first was just organizing fans' phones as an ad hoc network and trying to collect data that way by having limited transmission range for each one. And so we could use Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or Zigbee, depending on what's available. And then the key is developing the software that controls all this and the apps that enable the fans to have fun with it. Okay, so the good part of any analysis is coming up with a model first. And so you think about it for a little while and you try to use the tools that have been successful in the past. And one of the things we notice, we have 10 to the 5th, 10 to the 6th devices with sensors in them in an area of a square kilometer, basically the footprint of the stadium. And what we assume is that not everybody is going to use their phone. Not everyone will download their app, or they shut their phone off at some point. And so there's only some probability, p less than 1, that each phone is actually on and contributing to the data you're collecting. And if you assume all the fans are independent, they're sort of uniformly distributed around the stadium, so you can look at their location of phones that are participating in whatever application you have running as a spatial Poisson process. And now that you have that, what you want to do is figure out how to organize them, how to let them self-organize into a network to collect data and send it back to our other servers. And what we came up with was something that was meant to be as simple and as lightweight as possible. So we have each phone basically has a coin that it flips with probability, say, P1. And if it comes up heads, then it proclaims itself to be a cluster head. And it sends out a message saying, I'm a cluster head, with its address on it, for a certain number of hops. And then all the nodes in the stadium, all the other nodes that are not cluster heads, listen to all these things, and they associate with the one that's closest to them. And then if they have any data to send, they send it to that cluster head. And then that cluster head has to send the data back to the fusion center. And I'll show you a little more details of how that works. But anyway, so the analytical tools that end up, it's a huge set of analytical tools that come with this. Stochastic geometry and analysis of Voronoi cells. Okay, and here's what it actually looks like. So let's assume the square on the right here is a segment of the football stands. And so each green dot here would be a fan with a phone that's participating in this application. They can only transmit a limited distance, so sometimes their data has to hop along a long path to get to the cluster head, which is the blue dot here. And so all the nodes in this range, in this Voronoi cell, are sending their data to that cluster head. And so you get a whole bunch of these cells that fit together like that. And that's fine. And what we want to try to do is minimize the total energy expended to collect data from everybody's phone. So how do we minimize that energy? It turns out just having one layer of clustering like this may not be sufficient. So, but initially what we say is, cluster head, a node becomes a cluster head with probability P1. Other nodes associated with it. And then you may have a second level of clustering. Now these are all the same nodes. All these blue dots up here correspond to nodes down there. And the location of the cluster heads on level 2 is the same as the cluster head down here. And so a node that's a cluster head at level 1 flips a coin, and with probability P2 it declares itself to be a level 2 cluster head. Then all the other level 1 cluster heads that aren't level 2 cluster heads send their data to that node. And so you can see how you can recursively work your way up, having bigger and bigger Voronoi cells and longer paths from one cluster head to another cluster head. Until finally, at the top level, in this case it's 3 levels, the topmost cluster heads send their data to the final fusion center, which sends the data back to our servers. And along the way, the data is aggregated. So maybe each node here is making a local decision. Each cluster head aggregates that into a regional decision, forwards it on. Regional decisions get aggregated into larger regional decisions, and finally at the top you get a global decision that's sent to our server. Okay, so does everybody have the picture of how we're gathering data now? So you could do that in this room. Some of you could decide your level 1 cluster heads and your neighbors have to send data to you, and then some of you level 1 cluster heads declare, well, I'll be level 2, so all your level 1 cluster heads send your data to them and so forth. And it's actually, you can prove that under the right circumstances, and once you understand how much aggregation is taking place, you can optimize this and save a lot of energy. Much more, so if each node was trying to transmit its data directly to the fusion center, that would be very expensive in terms of energy. So that's why this is better. Okay, so next thing we have to understand is how data is aggregated at each level. Because if you're collecting it from, say, this side of the room here, your left side, my right side, when you send me your local decision, I'd like to know where it came from. So there may be some location data, and maybe some other metrics that come along with that. So each one of you is generating 1 unit of data, and it looks like there are about 40 of you. So 40 units of data go to the cluster head, and it may forward, say, 4 or 5 units of data. And so what we have to do is track that aggregation as it takes place from level to level. So alpha units in length from level 1 cluster heads, beta units, gamma units from level 3. Okay, so here's a real result. No equations. This is just plots from the equations. And what we're looking at is, let's suppose we have a stadium, and we can look at what happens when it's half full, 3/4 full, completely full, as more people show up. So that's as the number of nodes, which in this case are people. So the number of people increases in the stadium. And so what we see is there are thresholds. So if you have fewer than this users, you only need 1 level of aggregation. And this is how the probability of becoming a cluster head is optimized for each number of users. If you have more than that number, but less than this number, it turns out you want to have 2 levels of aggregation. So these are the optimal probabilities of being a cluster head for level 1 and for level 2. Then finally, if you really have a lot of people, it's best to have 3 levels of clustering. And again, these are the probabilities for each one of these being a cluster head. Okay, so fine. That's kind of cool in terms of an architecture. And you can actually kind of simulate it for what it looks like inside the stadium. And and get an idea of how much energy it would cost to collect data from everybody's phone. But the ultimate thing is to figure out what does it cost in terms of the total energy that you've used from people's phones. Because you don't want to wear people's batteries down. They'll get pissed off at you and then they'll never do it again. So there's always human factors in this. And so this is, again, the number of nodes n. And this is the energy consumption if you only have one level of aggregation. This is energy consumption if you have 2 levels of aggregation. And this is if you have 3 levels of aggregation. So you can see how, this is a significant improvement. Much more than, much less than half of the energy used. Okay, so that's fine. We can collect all the data. Then we did some analysis on how long it takes to collect all that data. And it does take a non-trivial amount of time, which is not good if you're trying to use that data to do something in real time. And in our case, what we're trying to do is to let the fans do something with their phone. Maybe they're shaking their phone, and we want to know how hard they're shaking their phone because they're using that to play a game that's illustrated on the big scoreboard at the end of the stadium. So you can all think about this. You're kind of voting for your favorite player. So they put a player's name up on the screen, and if you really like that player, you shake your phone really hard, and it communicates back how hard you're shaking the phone. If you don't like that player very much, you don't do anything with your phone. So you can actually have polls and things like that that are done just by people doing something with their phone. Okay, but you want to close that loop pretty quickly, right? If you have people vote, you don't want it to take 10 minutes to actually figure out who the most popular player was. You'd like to get them feedback within a few seconds. So now you have time constraints on your data collection. And so what we want to do is to try to limit the amount of time that it takes to gather the data before you make a decision. And what does that mean about how we collect that data and how we process that data? So first of all, it means you're not going to collect everything. So, and the example we'll use is, say, distributed estimation. We're trying to estimate the excitement of fans for a particular player. And so this would be for a single cluster now. We're only talking about one cluster. And they're all transmitting their data to the cluster head. And in fact, what we're going to do is only allow each node to send a single bit. So instead of sending, 16 bits or 32 bits, where they've actually, sampled the accelerometer very carefully, we just want them to tell us whether their accelerometer region occurred in a specific range, and they just send a one if it's a yes, or they don't send anything. So that really saves energy for people's phones and reduces the amount of communications a lot. Okay, so the Fusion Center collects these, makes its decision, and forwards that on. Okay, so now think about this. One way to do this is for those of you who are familiar with quantization theory. This just looks like quantization. So the cluster head, let's say I'm the cluster head and you're all the fans in the stadium. Well, what I would do is send you a bunch of thresholds like this. Maybe these are different levels of acceleration that I've found to be important to know about. And what you do is you decide, look at your measurement from your accelerometer and decide, does it fall in this interval, Tm to Tm plus 1, or T1 to T2, and so forth. And me as a cluster head, what I do is I organize the collection of data. I first ask people who are in, say, the first interval to send me a 1 if their sample fell in that interval. And then I go to the next interval, next interval, next interval. And so that collection looks like this here. And so in this case, I have, there were m thresholds. So I have a frame of data, and the length of that frame of data is the amount of time I'm allowed to collect data. So that's my time limit. And then within each one of these frames, I have slots, and users can transmit their bits in that slot. Now, this is all random access, so you know when the slot starts, but you don't know if anybody else is going to transmit. So maybe, 4 of you were in the first interval and 4 of you send a 1, and they're both in the first slot in that frame, so there's a collision. Or nobody transmits, that can happen too. Because the way you do this is you say, I have a bit to send, I know I should send it in this frame, I'm just going to pick one of these slots in which to send my bit, and I'm going to pick it at random. So this is actually kind of similar to how you would use Wi-Fi or Zigbee or any of the other protocols. It's just a simpler version of it. Okay, so is everybody comfortable with how we're collecting data? Okay, well now you want to know, how well do I do? And so without going into all the details, we take a look at the channel activity. And so here's an example. Let's suppose this is the true level of excitement of the fans for a particular player. There's some noise involved because everybody shakes their phones a little differently. And let's make a really simple assumption that it's Gaussian. And so what we're trying to do is estimate theta given our observations of y. And so that's the Gaussian for x, the random variable. This is the true value, in this case 0. Well, theta, in this case theta is 0. And so these are the number of users, N2, that transmit. They had a 1 in that interval. N4 users transmit a 1 because their reading was in that interval. And so when they transmit, they each have to pick a slot at random in here and transmit their bit in that slot. Well, you'll notice, if you understand probability, there are a lot more users in this range than there are in this range out here. And so there are a lot of people trying to transmit in these 3 slots. So a lot of them collide. So you get collisions. Every now and then, one of them transmits without a collision. We call that a safe transmission. Or out here, where it's a pretty rare event for somebody who's shaking their phone that hard, nobody sends anything. So those are idle slots. They're kind of wasted. But that's OK. And so one of the things you want to do is pick these tau sub i's very carefully to kind of spread users out. But then the other thing to notice is that if you can detect collisions, then collisions have information. Because in a collision, you know at least 2 users were transmitting a 1 in that slot. Now, you don't know if it was 2, 3, 4, 5, or so on, because you just know it's a collision. And so there's information in that. And so what we want to do is use all this information. So this is what the cluster head sees, is this sequence of collisions and idle slots and successful transmissions. And it tries to estimate the true value of theta based on the number of idle slots, number of successful slots, and number of collision slots in each one of those frames. Okay, so here are some results. And so this is in terms of, here we have the collection time. We're going to fix the frame size. So we're allowing longer and longer time, and then more frames of the same size. So because you have more time, you should expect to make a better decision, a decision which has less error. And sure enough, so this is the overall mean squared error, and you can see it goes down as you have more time to collect data. But you'll see that once you get out here, taking more time to collect data doesn't improve your decision at all. So you don't really need to go past 50 time slots in order to do a good job here. And then none of the other people have to transmit, saving them energy and saving you time. The other interesting thing is, because we have collisions and we don't have perfect information, you actually see dips in performance where the mean squared error goes down and starts going back up. Because as n goes up, you get more and more collisions, and you have less information in a collision than you have in a successful transmission or an idle slot. OK, so that's as technical as this gets. If you have any questions about it, ask me at the end of the talk. But that's the type of thing my PhD students do on this team. And then they produce the algorithms that the current students, current undergraduates, are trying to build and deploy on people's phones in the stadium. And we have a full cooperation with athletics on this. They're actually going to give us access to the Jumbotron at the south end of the stadium. And we'll first go in there with a boatload of students. and try things out before we actually try it out on real fans. But the ultimate goal is to actually have something deployed that's used by fans at a football game on game day. So other things we're doing, let's see. So this is just another step to the fully integrated Internet of People and Things within a stadium. And then the next step is, notice when I mentioned all the disciplines that were on the team, computer science, ECE, civil engineering, industrial engineering, I had business in there. We now have a marketing and commercialization subteam that's doing the market study and preliminary studies for how to spin off what they're doing into a company. Because we have applications that nobody else has, and we're hoping that there's a commercial market for them. And anyway, it's just fun to do all this. So you get to do everything from very high level PhD work and analysis down to building cool stuff and being in the stadium to see how well it works. And by the way, it doesn't always work. So the first time out there, one of the important things that you learn in a VIP project is that, whoa, the first time I put things out there, it fails and I really don't know why. And you don't quit like you would in a test, saying, oh, I can't answer that question, I'll just skip and go on to the next one. No, you got to stick with that until you figure out how to get it to work. And so that's one of the beauties of these projects, is seeing students struggle with something and then have that aha moment, where they really get something to work and they're something to be really proud of. Okay, so are there any questions? You can ask me questions about VIP or about this stuff.
I like the model. What is the likely candidate for wireless on standard phones that live today on the various platforms we have? Is there an ad hoc solution that is available to your students, or is that not realistic?
Sure, you can set up hotspots on your phone now. And so on Wi-Fi and connect to people in the local area.
But then you would, if my phone attached to your hotspot, I would now be disconnected from the world. So it's not really scalable. I'm thinking about, it's just, when we looked at ad hoc networks on various things, the support on Android phone was not great. That's what I'm saying.
No, I agree. It's not perfect. So we may actually have to go back. So the very early stages of this project, 2001, 2002, where we were trying to deliver video to people in the stands, there were no smartphones. So we had PDAs with Wi-Fi cards. And so HP donated a couple of hundred of them to us, and we handed them out to people in the stands. And so maybe we have to do something like that for the first stage of this. But there may be other things that are possible, with Bluetooth, that wouldn't necessarily be as difficult as with Wi-Fi. Second
question. So in your exploration of your multi-layer communication scheme, did it overlap with any of the technology that came out of the ad hoc networking stuff that the Army did 10, 15 years ago?
This was a different approach, especially the algorithm for clustering. And so that's, I'm trying to remember when that paper showed up. So we published the original version of that in Transactions on Communications somewhere in the early, late, I guess it was 95, 96. And at this point it's got well over 2,000 citations, because it was the original approach to doing something like this that wasn't centrally organized. And one of the reasons we did it that way, to allow the clustering to be done probabilistically, was it was very fast. And so if you need to recluster because a node dies, you can do that.
You said you were collecting like terabytes worth of RF data, but you didn't talk about. So what is the RF data being used for?
So our first application for it is actually localization within the stadium. So we're building a network of sensors around the upper edge of the stadium that look down into the crowd. And our goal is to be able to localize to within some accuracy, and still to be determined what that accuracy is, any particular source of Wi-Fi packets in the stadium. And so A, it's just for fun. B, it actually has some security applications. One of which is, we're just waiting until somebody, sneaks in a little drone, flies it around, and, irritates the opposing quarterback while they're trying to hike the ball. And so you want to find out, okay, who's communicating with that, or precisely locate it so you can block its communications. But yeah, so there was also an example where they think people were, CoachComm is actually the standard protocol, a standard system that coaches use on the field to talk with assistant coaches up in the stands. And the Patriots and Patriot Stadium, it's been alleged, I'm only alleging something here, that they have interfered at key points in the game with CoachComm that's being used by the opponent. And basically they jam it. And so you would really like to know where the jammer is.
Other questions?
Somebody
I was thinking old school about picking up. It seemed like did the project with the sensors start out as a civil engineering project? Because it seems kind of complicated. I'm the university stadium audio engineer, so a couple of microphones, I think I could tell you when there's an exciting play.
Well, we actually tried audio first, and yes, you can get some idea of how excited the fans are, but it'd be difficult to use fans' phones for that, for example, because you're just listening. Well, if you had enough of them, then you could listen to in basically every part of the stadium. If you only have a few of them, then you're only getting sort of local excitement, which may not be related to the game.
Yeah, I was actually thinking you would do a distant microphone outside the stadium and then one inside, and then using Fourier analysis, you would compare those two.
But we also wanted to know where the excitement was coming from.
That's second one.
So,
And,
is it where the fans of the opponent are sitting, or is it where your fans are sitting?
But I was curious though, was there a structural need to put those
Yes.
sensors in first?
Yes.
Was that was the dog, and then the tail was your idea, I guess.
So the structural need, and it was actually the folks at Athletics that asked us about this. The north stands is the newest part of the stadium, and it's actually a steel infrastructure with a concrete deck, and it's cantilevered out over a plaza. And so the thing tends to bounce, especially when it's full of people. And they were noticing some very fine cracks in the concrete and some concrete spalling. And so the concern was that it may actually be twisting, and they asked us if we could take a look at that. So I think we know how to do it, because you'd have to have those accelerometers at every major joint of the girders. You also have to take the data in highly synchronized fashion, so you can tell whether it's doing this, like a diving board, or whether it's twisting, and then to analyze and figure out all the resonant modes for the stadium. So that's where we were headed with that. But the first time we collected data, we noticed, wow, this gives us a really good idea what's happening in the game, too.
All right. More questions? We have time.
There's one over there.
Well, okay. I can't throw that far.
So one of the fun things about this is like the ultimate fusion of technology and sports.
Hello?
So,
Hi.
hi.
So we have a number of VIP projects here at UD, and in fact, I'm leading one of them. And
Oh, great.
yeah, but I was wondering if you do you have any advice about like how do you recruit students into a VIP project, and then once you have them, how do you motivate them to like do work and work towards the goals that you want?
Okay. So I'll show you how we advertise. Okay, so this is our, oops, where's my mouse? There it is. So this is one of the pages on the VIP website at Georgia Tech. And this is how we advertise all of our teams. This semester we actually have 70 teams. And so the students can scroll through this. There's another communications team. This is actually a DARPA challenge team, that one. This team sends robots down under glaciers in Antarctica. Oops, lost my mouse again. There it is. This is a biology team. They study bee populations on Georgia Tech campus and around the city of Atlanta, studying, colony collapse and bee death. Brain trauma assessment, analyzing, looking for types of brain trauma that affect speech and developing therapeutic approaches. This is a philosophy team. Actually looks at how people argue on the web. So it's joint philosophy and computer science. This is more of a service learning team. They have a lot of projects that they do with local community services. So anyway, we advertise this way. And then if you're a member of a specific discipline, you can either look through all of these, or if you click on that, it'll show you all of the teams that are listing students from that particular discipline or area that would like to have you as a member of their team. And then if you click on any one of these, see, I like to do BSnap because it's a little different. You get a description of the team. So what the goals of the team are. So if a researcher or a faculty member wants to have a team, they come to us and we say, okay, fill out this template and give us a couple icons, and they talk with us. It has to be something that lasts at least 4 years. Most VIP projects last a decade or more. And the advisor gets to tell us what disciplines they'd like to have on their team. Okay, so now the students can pick the team they want to join. They go and they apply. They can only apply for one team at a time. And then their application goes into a database that we look at. It's either the advisor or me. I do it for new teams, and then we turn it over to the advisors. And you look at all the students that have applied so far, and you know how many students there were on the team, how many more sophomores or juniors you need to add, what disciplines you need to add. So just by applying doesn't mean you get on a team. But there's no screening by GPA, and there's no interview process, and there are no prerequisites. So because of that, this is very accessible. And unlike this is a high impact program because it increases the rate at which people graduate. And what we found is that underrepresented minorities, for example, participate in VIP at the same rate that they appear in the background student population. So it's the only high impact program that's proven that. So it's a very open, accessible process. And the reason we don't screen by GPA is it's not associated with performance on the team. The only thing that we have found that's associated with performance on the team is the students' enthusiasm for the project. And
I was kind of wondering that too, how do you infuse the students with enthusiasm? How do you motivate them?
you assume because they applied to join your team. They weren't assigned to your team isn't required. So you're assuming they're joining your team because they're enthusiastic about it. And, and if they're not, you find out pretty quickly, right? The first semester they don't do very well, they don't get a very good grade. And either they get enthusiastic and come back, or they leave and do something else. And either way, it's, I prefer to have them come back because, if it's not enthusiasm that they're struggling with, they don't quite get how to be self-starters or something like that, then we mentor them and say, we'd like to have you back. You need to work on improving your skills in these areas. And other members of the team will help them with that, the more senior members and so forth. So the team is actually a small, really fun community because they're all interested in the same thing.
Hi, Ed.
Hi, Bob.
So it would seem that, how often is there a horizontal piece to this? It would seem to me there's as much value in engineers learning to work with marketing people, learning to work with pure scientists, and so forth.
So every team looks like this. Every single one of our VIP teams is multidisciplinary. And that's because when you're tackling long-term big projects like this, you need people from other disciplines. And you can see it sort of in the advisors. Some advisors sort of naturally span multiple areas. I'm comfortable doing networking and signal processing and a few other things. But I wouldn't be comfortable doing biology, okay? So if I'm studying bees, I can build sensors and wireless networks to monitor bees, but we need the biologist to understand, the biology of the bees. And so there would probably be a biology person co-advising the team with me. So half of our teams have one advisor. a quarter of them have 2 advisors, and the final quarter have 3 advisors. So, but every team ends up being multidisciplinary. And so that's another thing that's really unusual about this program, is that it actually makes it easy to do. Now, the hard thing that enabled this was going around, and this is where I probably spend half my time. I have to meet with the curriculum committee and the chair and the associate chair for every single department on campus to make this happen. And so that's over, well, we finally got our campus-wide designator for VIP a year and a half ago. So it took 8 years. Now, by us doing it, and by the way, there are 35 universities that have VIP programs, and Andy has done a great job implementing VIP here, and this is one of the leading sites. And I think the advantage of having many sites is, you know, maybe Delaware does something first, or Strathclyde University in Scotland does something first. They have VIP over there. We actually have a VIP, at least one VIP site on every continent now, except Antarctica. And so we actually share innovations. And so now you can point to us and say, oh, well, they have their own subject code for VIP. Why can't we have our own subject code? You know, because a lot of times administrators want to see precedent. Yeah, they don't want to take a risk. Well, we took that risk at Georgia Tech and it worked out really well, so now you can do it. And there are probably some things you're doing that we could learn from. So we actually meet every year, May 9th and 10th this year. 70 people from all the different VIP sites are getting together in Atlanta to talk about stuff like that. So there's a lot of background work that went into building this, but the amazing thing is once you get it all together, it just works so smoothly.
Ed, can you quickly break down how the grading works? And I assume the advisors come into it and maybe outside graders. Do you use peer and 360 review? Is that a big part of it?
So there are 3 factors in grading, and the first one is documentation, and the 3 are equally weighted. So documentation means each student maintains what we call a VIP journal, and there are some electronic versions of it now, as long as you can't go back and modify your earlier entries. And so we look at that. Each team has a wiki where it maintains sort of the common core of knowledge for the team that builds over time. We also have GitHub for people doing software, and final projects, reports, and presentations that go on the wiki. And what we tell the students is that, so we grade their notebooks for how detailed they are, and also for a record of what they did. And we tell them that if you didn't document it, then you didn't do it. So because of that, we've never had a grade appeal. The second factor is progress on the project, which is judged by the advisors and the graduate students and maybe the more senior students on the team in terms of how each student's contributing to moving the project forward. And so, yeah, that's kind of subjective, but it's kind of like evaluating your graduate students. Did they do a good job this semester on the project they're working on? And then the final one is actually teamwork, and we have our own custom peer evaluation system that we ask the students, and these are big teams too, so this is one of the reasons it had to be custom, is out of all the people on the team, you have to say which ones you worked most closely with, and then you do evaluations of them. And so it's usually a student evaluating other students on the sub-team of a team. And we look at who's giving advice to whom, how much are you getting advice, how much are you giving advice, what you think of other students' documentation, creativity, innovation. There's a 10K bonus they have to distribute amongst the students they're graduating, so they're forced to basically rank people. And then there's also, they have to give a written comment about each student. And so we look at all of that stuff twice a semester. So mid-semester and end of semester.
So it's probably not as likely in large teams, but is somebody tracking dysfunctional team behaviors? Oh, yeah. As an engineering manager, it's something you do every day when you manage teams. Sure. And it'd just be useful to know, I know what my teams do and why they're broken and how to fix them. Is somebody tracking all that? Yeah,
so that's me and the staff in VIP. We look at the grades from all the VIP teams, and one of the best indicators that a team is not functional is that all students are getting A's every semester. Because that generally indicates an advisor that's not doing their job. So the easy thing to do is to give everybody an A so they don't complain. And then the team gets a reputation for being an easy A, and it's just completely dysfunctional. So the first thing we do is we go and meet with the advisors and try to ask them what's going on and try to help them fix it. And if they're not interested in fixing it, then they don't get any more students after that semester. And we help the students who are on the team that still want to stay in VIP to transition to other teams. So we've had to kill 2 teams at Georgia Tech in 10 years.
For the executions, advisor-based or team-based?
Advisor-based in both cases. So the teams, usually if somebody's having a problem with their team, they'll come and talk with us or talk with other advisors. With 70 teams, there's a lot of experience. And so we have regular meetings of advisors where they talk about things that are happening on their teams and give advice to each other.
All right, that brings us to the end of the question period. Let's give don't go away, but let's give a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Goodman, and I'm a sophomore computer engineering major here at the university. The Distinguished Achievement Award is the most prestigious honor bestowed upon alumni of the ECE department. Individuals receiving this award have distinguished themselves significantly through contributions in engineering research, practice, education, or business. On behalf of the ECE, I'd like to present the Distinguished Achievement Award to Dr. Ed Coyle. Edward J. Coyle is the John B. Peatman Distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology and a Georgia Research Alliance Eminent Scholar. He's the founder and director of the Vertically Integrated Projects Program, which integrates research and education by embedding large-scale, long-term undergraduates into the research efforts of faculty and graduate students. He's also the director of the VIP Consortium, which includes 28 universities. Coyle received a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering at UD in 1978, followed by a Master's and PhD at Princeton University. Coyle was a co-recipient of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering's 2005 Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education, and is an IEEE Fellow. His research interests include systematic reform of higher education, signal and information processing, and wireless and sensor networks.
Well, thanks very much for the award. I didn't actually know I was getting this until about half an hour before. So my comment to all of you who are here at Delaware is I really enjoyed my time here as an undergrad. And I got to work with some amazing people. Pete Warder was the chair at the time, and he involved me in an undergraduate research project. And so I still have a lot of great friends from that time that I was here, and learned a lot about getting involved in things. So if you're enthusiastic about something, go do something about that. And talk with people in your department and get to know them and get to know what's going on. You folks have a VIP program now too. And or you can have crazy projects that you do on the side. I think that's one of the reasons, by the way, we created the program like this was I was teaching a junior level class at Purdue, and we noticed over the years that I talked to all the students who came by from my class, and fewer of them had crazy things that they were doing on the side, building systems and things like that. And they also had hobbies, but they said they weren't doing them anymore because they were so busy with their classes. So what we decided to do was actually create a program like this and make it count for credit, so you can actually do something real, live, and fun, even if you had to work to pay tuition. Or for any other reason, you could have it count towards your degree. So the systemic reform of education was really to push back on the domination of just pure coursework, to enable people to really find out what real engineering, real science, real humanities is like while they're still in college. So, thanks.
Hello, I'm Jason Reynolds. I'm a senior here in the ECE department at the University of Delaware, where we all are. Anyway, in a few weeks I'll be graduating with degrees in computer engineering, computer science, and history. I'm here to present the Outstanding Service Award to Dr. Martin. This award acknowledges alumni who, through dedication and exemplary volunteer service, illustrate broad leadership in support of the aims and objectives of the ECE department. Honorees recognized by this award have set a strong example to their fellow alumni through their exceptional contributions to scholarship, teaching, or other improvements for ECE faculty and students. I'm really honored that I was asked to present this award to Dr. Martin because he's had a tremendous impact on my life. In the time that I've known him, he's been both an indispensable advisor and a tireless advocate on my behalf. It's been a soundboard for me with regards to everything from design, business ideas, grad school, and just general life stuff. And I know I'm just one of the many students whose life he's changed. He's a man with great integrity and empathy and a really dedicated educator. So a little bio for him. Dr. Richard Martin is an associate professor of practice in UD's Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, holds a BS in physics from Millersville University of Pennsylvania, and an MBA, an MSEE, and PhD degrees from the University of Delaware. His doctoral work on photonic devices was conducted at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory under a NASA Graduate Student Research Fellowship. And he taught as an adjunct professor at the University of Delaware and other universities while working with technology-based startups. Brings 25 years of industrial and entrepreneurial experience to the department. In 2017, he became a full-time UD faculty member and holds an affiliated faculty position at UD's Horn Entrepreneurial Program, and he also serves as a CTO of Resonant Forward LLC, which is a startup developing wearable therapeutic devices for people with Parkinson's disease. So, congratulations, Dr. Martin.
Cindy had promised me I didn't have to say anything, so I'm going to spare you, and I just want to say thank you for this great honor. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Carolia Peña. I am a second year PhD student at the ECE department, and I am here to present the Entrepreneurial Innovation Award. This award is conferred upon alumni who have created or influenced an innovative business, developed a new product, brought to market a new venture, or expanded an existing business. Honorees recognized by this award exemplify the entrepreneurial spirit central to the ECE discipline. On behalf of ECE, I'd like to present the Entrepreneurial Innovation Award to Dr. Kurt Epley. Dr. Epley is a distinguished engineer at Google, where he works in the areas of virtual and augmented reality, a pioneer in the field of computer graphics and a co-founder of Silicon Graphics, later known as SGI. He led the development of innovative products such as Reality Engine and the industry standard OpenGL graphics system. After leaving SGI in 2001, Dr. Epley completed his long-deferred PhD work at Stanford, working in the areas of stereo, 3D display, and human perception. He then joined Microsoft Research, where he was Assistant Managing Director of Microsoft's Research Lab in Beijing. After returning to the US in 2007, developed a prototype live field display with resolution sufficient to stimulate focus cues in human viewers. Dr. Eckley earned a BEE degree from the University of Delaware in 1980, an MSEE and PhD in EE from Stanford. He is a member of the National Academy of Engineering, a fellow of the ACM, and in 1995 was awarded ACM's SIGGRAPH Computer Graphics Achievement Award. He is a named inventor on over 30 patents.
No one told me if I would or wouldn't have to say anything, but so I'll also be brief. Basically, like Ed, I had the privilege of working with Professor Peter Warder when I was here in the late 70s, and I picking up similar project work that Ed did, but I didn't pursue it similarly. I would say that this VIP stuff is like a very direct outcome of having that amazingly positive experience of getting so deeply involved in project work. I didn't do that, but it was a great launching point for getting involved in similar project work at Silicon Graphics and throughout my career, and so I deeply appreciate the experience I had as an undergraduate here at the University of Delaware, and particularly the experience I had with Professor Peter Warder. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Cuadros. I'm a PhD student at the ECE department, and I'm here to present the Young Alumni Achievement Award. This award recognizes alumni who have graduated within the past 15 years and have excelled in their chosen professions. Awardees exhibit outstanding technical achievement, entrepreneurship, or leadership with achievements that distinguish them among their recent fellow graduates. On behalf of ECE, I'd like to present the Young Alumni Achievement Award to Nicole Wells. Nicole graduated summa cum laude from the University of Delaware in 2013, attaining a 4.0 GPA while pursuing a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and minors in both computer science and mathematics. During her time at UD, Nicole performed undergraduate research with the Seaborg Research Group led by Dr. Fuad Kamilev, and she contributed to the V2G project, in which custom charging hardware enables electric vehicles to flow energy back into the grid during times of peak demand. Following graduation, Nicole accepted a position with Apple in California. She works as a sensor algorithm engineer in the Human Interface Device Group, joining fellow UD ECE alumni Wayne Westerman. Nicole leads a small team of algorithm engineers to solve the signal processing and gesture recognition challenges of developing Apple's latest input devices. Cool.
Hi. I just wanted to say I was really lucky while at UD to have really great mentors. So I had Dr. K, who was my research advisor, and I had Dr. Cotton, who advised us on senior projects. And I think things like that were able to give me practical experience. Even though I took classes here in microcontrollers and things, it didn't really click for me until I was trying to make things work with my own hands. And I think that really helped me launch into doing the same thing with sensors and microcontrollers at Apple. So thanks.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hui Fang. I'm a faculty member at the ECE department. I help organize the poster showcase for the research day, and I hope you have all enjoyed it. So first, I want to thank all of the faculty members and the students who participated in the poster showcase. With all your efforts, we have a record number of 92 posters. in this year's Research Day. So we are fortunate to have 18 judges from advisory council members to our industry partner and faculty members to judge, and I'm happy to announce the winners for our poster sessions. So I will start with the graduate category. So the winner for the signal processing and the communication is the poster title, The Hybrid Precoding for Millimeter Wave MIMO Systems with Finite Size Code Books by Bohan Zhang, and the advisor is Professor Lan Simini. Congratulations. The winner for the NEP category, the poster is titled High Performance Ultra Thin Body Dioxide Thin Film Transistors with Record On and Off Current Ratio and Subthreshold Swing by Jie Zhang, Guangyang Lin, Peng Cui, Yu Ying Zhang, Mariel Gabriel Sales, Chao Ying Ni, Stephen McNeil, and the professor is Yu Ping Zheng. Is Jie here? No, probably Yu Ping. Can you come up to? Do you want Yu Ping to come? Okay, then we will get it. Sorry. We will only give to students. So the next category is the Graduate Research Award for the Computer Engineering Network. The winner is, again, Patrick Cronin. The poster title is Charger Surfing, Cracking Smartphone Passcodes via Power Line Snooping. The advisor is Cheng Mo Yang and Haining Wang. Congratulations. And so now we move on to the categories for the undergraduate students. First, it's for the capstone senior design. The winner is the titled Heart Radar Data Visualization with Augmented Reality. The students' winners are Colby Kurentnik, Jason Reynolds, Werner Wieser, and Simon Romano. Could you please come up to the stage? Okay, the next category is VIP project. The winner is Trick Robotics. The students are Derek Bettelcourt, Joseph Lockhart, Andrew Slomsky, Vishnu, Somostaram, Jacob Lupson, Sri Vankastash. Congratulations. So the final award for the undergraduate student is Undergraduate Summer Research. The poster is titled The Thermal Investigation of Photodiode Flip Chip Bonding. The student name is Adam Dady, and the advisor is Denise Priser. Congratulations.